Okay, so yeah, we're back again and talking about the issue of being gay, practicing homosexuality, how we discuss this as Christians, before looking at the stereotypes. But I suppose now I want to get a little deeper and just think about, okay, somebody can be gay, practicing homosexuality, how they arrived there, how they got there, and I can't go so deep into it as is to say we're sitting here, we've been homosexual, we know that we've come from there, but we may know people who are homosexual, spoken to them, read different things, done research, which I've done myself and written about, and I know you guys would have had contact with things around this topic and people around this topic. And what I want to really discuss is, are people gay or gay for the same reasons? It's not, is it? You know, and it sounds like a silly question, but you know, people just treat them like, you know, they're all gay, they're all the same, get rid of all of them. Have people have that kind of attitude to just wipe them with the same slate. And I suppose I want to discuss what are the few things that you think could make somebody even entertain that, or which is a bit of a sensitive topic for some. Some might even just be gay anyway and they're naturally gay. Now I know some people say, well, that's not possible, you can't be naturally gay. But let's unpack that a bit. What have you come across, or who have you spoke to or read about and seen things where you thought actually there's different reasons for why people might practice homosexual behaviour?
I've certainly come across people who've suffered terrible abuse, and sexual abuse.
Yeah.
As child, as young people, and as a result of that, they have found, as it were, the only avenue to be safe is actually in having a gay relationship. I can think of a number of people, and actually quite a number of women actually, who were raped and so on when they were young, and then found later on that they found somebody of the same sex able to offer them trust, intimacy, care, that they didn't find or found was impossible in what you call a heterosexual relationship, because of what had happened to them. So this is something that they went down, you could call it experiment, I don't want to use the term experimentation, but it might be how you categorise it to some extent, through their own experience, their very bad experiences. So, I mean, that's something that I've come across.
So in that respect, for some, it's a negative experience that could have been the catalyst for them saying, okay, no, there was a woman, maybe they was raped by a man, and from then on, it was just never the same in terms of having a relationship with a male.
Yes.
And they found more comfort with a female, that just grew and became something else.
Yes.
Okay.
I think there's situations as well that some people, like you mentioned about being born that way inclined, or whichever way. I don't know what's the politically correct way of saying it. I don't want to get myself in trouble.
It's the nature nurture argument that we'll be touching soon.
And I think that they no issues in the childhood, no issues in the childhood at all, and then they just happens that way that they just come and shock everyone and go, oh hi, this is who I'm with, and you're like, how? And there's no history of any sort of abuse, because sometimes we can get.
So what Reverend was saying, there's no history, there's none of that.
There's none of that.
No. They've just come out one day and says, yes,
this is where
I like same sex.
And to be honest, some of my conclusions in certain situations, because it's not a case of only know about 2, 3. I've good friendships with about 4, 5, 6, 7, not quite a number, of my years. I'm not really the sort of guy who goes, oh, keep your distance away from me. I'll just talk to people the same way, you know what I mean? Yeah. And some of the situations I've seen, just in the corner of my eye, is where they issues with maybe their mum being a certain way towards the dad and whatsoever, or certain relationship with the parents has affected their whole angle when it comes to relationships. So if they're seeing an abusive husband to wife or wife to the husband, then it kind of affects their choice later in life,
Wouldn't that be a sort of abuse in terms of what Reverend Ian was saying?
But not on a personal level to themselves.
Yeah, not to them personally, but what they've experienced or been a part of.
They've seen bad choices.
Seen bad situations happen in front of them. And it affects them. And not even the case of physical or anything, but it could be verbal, it could be as what we could see as minor. Yeah. But just them sort of things could actually challenge them.
Yeah, and I don't want people who's listening or watching to think we're trying to come up with the actual reasons why people have gone down that road, but we're just exploring, what people have said,
how expensive.
Yeah, how things could have happened. I think another one that I've seen, which is not as dramatic in terms of the negative experience, but just the experimentation in terms of we're in a culture now where it's okay to be bisexual. It's kind of okay to be whatever sexual you want to be. It's kind of celebrated in that. Yeah. A lot of film stars and guys will come out and say, I'm bisexual, I do both sides. And then I think to myself, when people say to them, but are you gay? And they turn around and say no. And some people hear that and say, well, how can you're a man, you're sleeping with a man, but you're not gay. How does that work? And then at first it confused me, but then I thought, actually, because homosexuality, if you look at the technical term, is actually representative of their behaviour rather than the disposition of the person. The homosexuality is what their behaviour. So, and I've seen even when I went to do a recording in a radio studio years ago when I was a rapper and with another group within a radio, and I had a party downstairs in university, and the guys were drinking and having a celebration for the end of year, and I walked in there and I was shocked because I didn't know where I was going, so I kind of got lost. And when I walked in there, only quickly, I seen the guys embracing each other and kissing each other and snagging, but then I knew they were off their head as well, and a lot of them were drunk and things like that. But then I think there's also an element where people do it where it's not serious to them, but they're experimenting with it. And I'm not saying that justifies it, but I do think some people think, what's the problem?
Yeah.
What's the problem? I wouldn't class them necessarily as essentially a gay person, but they're practicing that homosexuality.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think in some communities it's almost like a rite of passage. These different expressions of sexuality have become a rite of passage.
Yeah, no, definitely. I find that I think that we, like you said, we can come to a million ways of trying to understand how the inputs of their life has affected them. I think as well for ourselves, for everyone, whatever's been put inside of us will come out. Yeah. And I think, and this is where, for me, as a Christian now, for me as well, it's how what I invest into people, it will come out. And if I correctly invest into people, it will hopefully come out correctly. Now, sometimes we don't even touch this subject. We treat it, we don't even talk, like I said, we just chuck under the carpet, so we don't talk about at all or touch. So there's no healthy environment for the conversation apart from in an environment where I can talk about it amongst people who are pro homosexuality, but to be in an environment which is not judgmental, which is not going to say to you, okay, right, listen, I tried something last night, and they're able to feel confident enough to go to pastor, to go to someone in the church, say, listen, I kind of messed up now. Somebody who maybe got into a relationship with the opposite sex, that could probably feel more comfortable going to the youth leader. Now, somebody who did the same sex, I know, I've been in church all my life, I know they are not going to see anyone in the church at all, to have a talk about it, to have a conversation about it, because they know if it ever gets out, they're finished, there's no future for them.
I think that's partly the reason why, and just to make clear why we even want to get into the reasons of why somebody may have been practicing homosexuality or comes out and says I'm gay, and I have been from day one, is that we have to be careful when we're having a conversation with them as Christians and even with each other to remember that, because the way you deal and speak to somebody who's got a history of abuse will be different to the way you deal with somebody who is just experimenting.
Yeah.
That's different conversations. If we're going with the same manner with both of them, you're walking into your fire. It's like you're going to cut off both because you can't do that. So I think it's making clear that take time to get to know the person, regardless if their sexuality is like, wow, I don't agree with it. Take some time to find out where are they coming from, what happened, You might not get that in the first conversation, but as we know, even as Christians and knowing people, we should be building relationships anyway, so they can see Jesus, and it happens over time. It's not a case of they tell you I'm a homosexual, then you're trying to change them and convert them in the first conversation. You know, it's like, no, know the person, know where they're coming from, know they spend time. I think that's the reason why it's important that we actually go back and think, well, what are the reasons somebody may practice homosexuality, or say, I'm being gay from day one, or I'm experimenting, or whatever. I think it's key people know that. It helped me. I'm sure it will help us in our ministry. It help us just as people. Yeah. Not to just use a judgment to do something, but actually treat people as people.
100%. Yeah.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Cool.
But we're gonna go a bit deeper. So, be ready.